Hey guys, tonight we're going on a softly glowing journey, into the misty peaks of the Andes, the humming plazas of Cusco, and the richly adorned heart of an empire that saw gold not as treasure, but as the literal sweat of the sun. We're talking about the Incas, and what they really did with their famous, fabulous, almost mythic gold. Imagine walking barefoot across smooth stone still warm from the day, surrounded by walls that sparkle with sheets of hammered metal. Every surface flickers as the last rays of sunlight pour over mountaintops. You pause beneath a looming stone arch. It's silent, except for the rustle of wind, and the low echo of a flute playing far off. This is the Inca Empire at its peak. Beautiful. Unbelievably clean. And golden. You probably won't survive here, though, not unless you're okay with high-altitude hiking, ritual fasting, and the casual presence of preserved mummies giving you judgmental side-eye in ceremonial meetings. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love hearing where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your climb high into the Andean world. The trail winds above river gorges, past terraces carved like green stairways into mountainsides. Llamas grunt softly nearby. The air smells of stone and sunlight. You arrive in Cusco, the capital. Not the Cusco of today, with souvenir stalls and backpacker hostels, but the one of the early 1500s. Broad plazas, straight roads paved with shockingly well-fitted stone blocks, and temples that gleam with solar fire. Here, gold is everywhere, but not in your pockets. It's pressed into the walls of temples. Melted into masks. Shaped into stalks of corn that never grow, but always shine. To the Incas, gold isn't currency. It's divinity. It is not for buying, it is for worship. A physical echo of the sun, which they call Inti. That's right, the Incas didn't have money in the way we think of it. No coins. No bills. No credit cards with 17% interest. Instead, they traded with labor, built networks of reciprocity, and saved their gold for ceremonies, offerings, and the occasional full-sized golden llama. You pass into the Coricancha, the most sacred temple in Cusco. Its name means, golden enclosure, and yes, it's just as extra as it sounds. Gold sheets once lined the inner walls. A golden disk of the sun hung above the altar. In the gardens, a field of maize glowed, not because it was ripe, but because it was sculpted entirely from gold and silver. Each stalk, leaf, and ear painstakingly shaped. Decorative? Yes. But also deeply symbolic. A reminder that the earth's bounty was a gift from the gods, and gold was their signature. Historians still argue whether all the Coricancha's decorations were purely ceremonial or if some served economic or political functions. But the consensus is clear, gold in this world meant something more than power or wealth. It was a cosmic material, connecting the divine and the earthly. Inti's sweat, they called it. Light made solid. You pause beside a massive stone wall, each block perfectly carved, fitted so tightly that even a strand of hair couldn't slide between them. On a festival day, this entire plaza would shimmer with offerings. Golden cups full of chicha, fermented maize beer, raised in toasts to the ancestors. Necklaces and chest plates carried by the priesthood. Even animals, real and sculpted, paraded in the sunlight. You don't touch anything. Not because it's forbidden, but because everything here feels alive. Like it's watching. The gold isn't hoarded. It isn't hidden. It's present. Out in the open. Part of everyday ritual and celebration. And no one seems afraid it will be stolen. You move toward a small shrine carved into the rock. An attendant sweeps the threshold with branches. You duck your head and step inside. The walls flicker with reflected light from a single polished golden disc mounted in the back wall. This is not a vault. It's a prayer. And it's only the beginning. You're still in the golden light, standing in the temple's heart, and the disk in front of you is no mere ornament. It represents Inti, the Inca sun god, and it isn't just worshipped, it's watched. Tended. Federal bathed in offerings of smoke, song, and sunlight. Because to the Inca, gold was not a treasure. It was a being. A substance born from the divine, touched by the sun, and shaped by those who understood its sacred role. You step back slowly from the shrine, blinking as your eyes adjust to the warm gleam bouncing off the hammered surface. You've just seen the Incan idea of holiness, not high above or locked away, but right here, glowing in a stone room that smells of dried flowers and burnt coca leaves. You walk the stone paths of Cusco now, your sandals tapping gently. Each step takes you further into a world that has no banks, no wallets, no markets echoing with the jingle of coins. In this place, gold doesn't buy, it binds. It connects the Inca people to their gods, to the ancestors, to the world beyond the peaks. The Inca emperor, the Sapa Inca, was considered the living son of the sun god. Literally. Not metaphorically. When he stepped into the plaza during religious festivals, draped in robes that shimmered with gold thread, wearing a mask of beaten gold, the crowd didn't just see a ruler. They saw divinity. Living sunlight. Walking majesty. It said that people would avert their eyes, not out of fear, but reverence. Historians still argue whether the emperor's gold regalia was designed to blind, impress, or both. But one thing is clear, it wasn't about bling. It was about being. He didn't wear gold to show he was rich. He wore it to show he wasn't entirely human. You reach the edge of the temple complex and see two attendants preparing offerings for the rising sun. Golden cups of chicha rest on a stone altar. Flower petals are scattered in an intricate spiral. One priest raises a polished metal disc to reflect the first rays of light back toward the heavens. It's not superstition. It's reciprocity. Inti gives life, they return the favor in symbols he can understand. And speaking of symbols, you pass by a set of gold ornaments stored in a sacred bundle. These include nose rings the size of bracelets, chest plates that would have covered entire torsos, and tiny sculptures of animals, llamas, frogs, condors, all crafted with delicate precision. These weren't worn around town or displayed for vanity. They were used in rituals, buried in mountaintops, or offered in sacred caves. Some were made just to be given away. That's the thing, Inca gold was meant to be surrendered. It didn't belong to the people. It belonged to the gods. You pause at a wall covered in pictographs. They show the emperor raising a golden staff. A sunburst above him. Beneath him, fields of maize stretch toward a river. There are no words, at least not in our sense, but the message is clear. The land shines because the gods are pleased. And the gods are pleased because the people give. You wander through another courtyard, where ceremonial drums sit silently beside bronze mirrors. These mirrors were sometimes polished gold, used to reflect not your face, but your essence. Priests believed they could see the spirit through light. And gold, as the purest form of light, was a divine window. One fringe belief suggests that certain golden objects were considered alive, not metaphorically, but actually infused with spirit. People whispered to them. Offered them coca. Touched them as they passed. They weren't just valuable. They were respected. Back in the temple's shadows, a child places a small gold insect on a stone shelf. It's just one of hundreds, maybe thousands, offered to the gods over centuries. You watch in silence as the child bows, steps back, and vanishes into the corridor. That tiny insect? Not a toy. Not a decoration. A symbol. A message to the divine. And that's the difference here. Inca gold wasn't about possession. It was about presence. It filled temples, not treasuries. It adorned mummies, not markets. It shone for the gods, not for gain. So tonight, As you close your eyes and the temple fades from view, let yourself remember this: not all that glitters is greed. Sometimes, it's gratitude. You move quietly now, deeper into the sacred compound, where the stones seem smoother and the air a little cooler. The torchlight flickers against the walls, and there, just ahead, is a doorway draped in finely woven cloth. You duck inside, and what greets you isn't a throne room or treasury, but something stranger, quieter. A circle of seated figures. Still. Draped in elaborate garments, rich in red, yellow, and yes, gold. But they are not alive. They are mummies. And not hidden away, either. These are royal ancestors, carefully preserved and fully dressed in their finest regalia, seated upright as if awaiting the start of a formal banquet. Their hair braided. Their faces dark and leathery. Their heads crowned with gold discs, their arms wrapped with gleaming jewelry. You step closer, and a quiet reverence fills you. Because to the Inca, these weren't corpses. These were still people. Advisors. Witnesses. Holders of memory and spirit. They were brought out for festivals. Consulted on important matters. And yes, given their own cups of chicha at ceremonial feasts. You pause at the nearest figure, her robe glinting with tiny hammered gold flowers, each one sewn by hand. On her chest, a solid gold disc, about the size of a dinner plate, rests like a quiet sun. Around her neck, layers of thick golden collars, polished to an otherworldly gleam. This isn't wealth. This is presence. Historians still argue whether these mummies were literally consulted or symbolically honored, but many accounts from Spanish observers describe them being carried through the streets, seated beside the living nobles, and even hearing petitions during formal court rituals. You wander along the line of ancestors. Each one is seated, propped, and adorned slightly differently. One holds a golden figurine in each hand, a frog in one, a condor in the other. Another has golden sandals and a mask shaped like a jaguar's face. These aren't trinkets. They're messages. Animal spirits. Royal emblems. Extensions of power. What's remarkable is how intimate this all feels. These aren't hoarded treasures locked away in vaults. They're worn. Displayed. And in some cases, left exposed to sunlight, so that Inti might recognize his children and bless them again. You reach a platform at the rear of the chamber. On it, a more elaborate mummy rests, clearly a former emperor. His cloak is encrusted with gold dust, like he's been sleeping beneath a field of stars. He wears a golden headdress shaped like sunrays, and across his chest lies a golden staff, his symbol of rule. It's said that the living Sapa Inca would sometimes ask questions aloud to these ancestors, then interpret signs, shifts in wind, the rustle of banners, as answers. Fringe traditions suggest that messages from the dead were interpreted through golden mirrors placed near their faces. A shimmer, a flicker, a glint of light could carry meaning. You sit now, quietly, in the presence of these golden remains. There is no fear. No discomfort. Just the soft weight of ritual and memory. This is what the Incas used their gold for, not self-glorification, but continuity. Connection. To the past, to the divine, and to the community still living. And here's the part that really gets you: these mummies were treated better than many of the living. They were fed, dressed, sung to, consulted, and revered. Their gold wasn't melted down. It wasn't pawned. It wasn't stashed in secret. It was displayed, because it helped keep the line between worlds open. You rise, bow your head slightly, and back out of the chamber. The air outside feels warmer now. Brighter. Gold, to the Inca, was never just gold. It was the bridge between life and death. Between memory and presence. Between kings and gods. So tonight, if you dream of silent advisors in golden masks, seated patiently in a firelit room, just know, they're not haunting you. They're helping. You step back into the open air now, the sun hanging low in the Andean sky, casting long shadows over the stone plaza. The light hits the walls of the temple and bounces, softly, gently, off sheets of hammered gold still clinging to their surfaces like sunbeams that decided to stay a while. But this time, you're not looking up. You're heading down. Toward the royal tombs. Not tonight. Tonight you're following a quiet procession toward a smaller structure, ornate, circular, and surprisingly delicate. A hush falls over the people nearby. They're carrying something wrapped in white. Small. Important. You follow. Because tonight, you're visiting the Incas' other obsession, preparing for the afterlife. And that meant gold, not tucked into treasure chests, but carefully crafted into masks, breastplates, rings, and tiny, beautiful things that were meant to be buried. Inside the circular chamber, a noble lies in state. Not mummified yet, but close. Elders chant softly. A fire burns. And on a woven mat nearby sits a box of golden objects, already prepared for the funeral bundle. They're not flashy. Not giant statues or gold bricks. Just well-made, meaningful pieces. You kneel beside the box. There's a pair of delicate ear spools, each one shaped like a hummingbird's wing. A chest ornament with the face of Inti in miniature. A mask, not for scaring, but for guiding. These weren't decorative. They were directional. Markers to help the soul find its way beyond the mountains, across the spirit river, and into the lands beyond the stars. You're told that these objects will be wrapped into the noble's funerary bundle. Not for display. Not for inheritance. But for travel. The next life matters just as much as this one, and gold helps bridge the gap. Historians still argue whether these golden funerary objects were reserved only for the elite or if smaller communities also participated in similar rites using copper or ceramics. But everyone agrees on this: the Incas viewed gold as sacred material, ideal for linking mortal flesh to a mortal purpose. You watch as a young girl places a tiny gold jaguar beside the noble's hand. Her fingers tremble, but her face is calm. The jaguar is power, strength in the night, a guardian. It is not a toy. It is not a trinket. It is part of the journey. And here's something curious: even the dead were buried with tools. Tiny golden weaving combs. Little maize kernels made from silver. A golden spoon. Because the afterlife, like this life, required work. You wouldn't laze among the clouds, you'd farm the spirit maize, tend to spirit llamas, and weave spirit cloths. Gold, as the eternal metal, simply traveled best. You sit by the doorway as the burial songs continue. A golden cup of chicha is passed around, poured slowly into a stone basin. One for the body. One for the earth. One for the sky. It glimmers briefly, then vanishes into the dust. Outside, another golden mask glints in the hands of a craftsman. He polishes it not with cloth, but with ash, rubbing gently until the face shines, not bright, but soft. Like moonlight. This mask will never be worn. It's already destined for a grave. And that's the key: Inca gold was never about permanence. Not in the sense of hoarding. It was made, given, and returned to the soil. Just like everything else. Gold came from the mountains, after all. From veins in sacred hills, hidden caves, and riverbeds whispered about by elders. And to those mountains, it often returned, buried deep alongside those who once shone with it. You rise slowly, your legs stiff from sitting. The burial songs have ended. The fire crackles low. Outside, the last sunlight catches on a row of golden hummingbirds hung from a shrine beam, each one dancing gently in the wind. So tonight, as your eyes close and your thoughts begin to drift, think of those little offerings, softly shaped, lovingly placed. They weren't meant to dazzle. They were meant to help. And if you dream of walking a path lit with golden feathers, don't be surprised. You're not alone. You rise with the morning light, warm gold already spilling across the terraces of Cusco like a blanket freshly unrolled from the sky. But today you're not visiting temples or tombs. Today, you're heading into the workshops, the quiet corners where gold was shaped, not stored. Where light was captured by hand. You follow a path to the edge of the city, where stone houses with open walls reveal a scene of glowing industry. Not smoke and sparks, but something quieter, craft. Inside, men and women sit cross-legged on mats, fingers moving with the calm precision of memory. You've arrived in the world of the Inca goldsmiths. You step closer, careful not to speak too loudly. This isn't a market. It's a sacred place. The tools are few, simple stones, wooden paddles, hollow reeds. No hammers. No molds. And yet, in one corner, someone shapes a golden frog the size of a coin, every toe carefully tapped into form. How? They use a technique called repousse, pressing the gold from the back to make it rise on the front. There's no forge. No smelter. Just low, even heat from coals and the patient movement of hands. One smith polishes a flat disc until it gleams like still water. Another uses a llama-bone stylus to scratch fine lines into a nose ring shaped like a crescent moon. You lean in. The metal glows, not bright, but alive. Like it wants to speak. Historians still argue whether Inca metalwork reached its pinnacle just before the Spanish arrived, or whether more refined styles were yet to come. But most agree, these artisans didn't just make objects. They made meaning. You watch a child hand a goldsmith a small lump of ore. The smith doesn't weigh it or inspect it for purity. He simply holds it up to the sun, nods once, and begins to work. And here's the thing, these artisans didn't work for profit. They worked for the gods, the state, and the spirit of the people. Their labor was part of the MITA system, a form of rotational community service. A goldsmith might work here for months, then return to farming, herding, or weaving in their home village. There's no signature on the pieces. No brand. No "Made in Inca Empire" stamp. Just form, function, and intention. You're invited to sit with them. A small golden maize kernel is passed to you, not to keep, but to hold. It's light. Hollow. Yet it feels full. You marvel at the detail, every ridge and crease perfectly rendered. You realize someone made this not because they had to, but because they believed it mattered. In another corner, someone repairs an earring that once belonged to a high priest. It's not melted down or recast. It's restored. Because the object carries memory. Just like the people. One fringe account describes goldsmiths as spiritual intermediaries, people who could hear what the gold wanted to be. Whether that's poetic license or genuine belief is still debated. But watching them now, you understand why someone might think it. There's a rhythm to it all. No barking orders. No rush. Just the steady scrape of bone on metal, the breath of warm coals, and the occasional quiet joke between artisans. You turn and see a shelf of finished work, golden puma claws, sunburst discs, tiny spoons, feathers, and flowers. Each one has a destination, a shrine, a burial, a ritual, or an offering. None will be sold. None will be hoarded. Because in this world, gold is not about accumulation. It's about circulation. It moves from earth to hands, from hands to temple, from temple to spirit, and back again. You return the maize kernel with a slight bow. The goldsmith nods. Not as a farewell, but as an understanding. So tonight, when you lie down and drift towards sleep, think of hands working by firelight, not for riches, but for reverence. Shaping light into legacy. Giving the sun a voice in metal. And if you dream of golden cornfields that don't sway, but glow, you'll know where they came from. You leave the workshop behind, the scent of warm coals and dry earth still clinging to your clothes, and follow a narrow stone path that winds back toward the sacred center of Cusco. The city hums gently around you, voices low, sandals soft against stone, a sense that everything here is in motion even when nothing seems to move. But here's the surprising part, no one is carrying coins. No stalls shout prices. No one haggles. There is no marketplace filled with the clink of gold changing hands. Because in this world, gold doesn't function as money. You find that strange, don't you? In a place where gold shimmers from temple walls and glows from the cuffs of priests, it has no value as currency. You sit on a low terrace overlooking the plaza, watching as laborers carry bundles of maize to a storage hut, while a weaver delivers new tunics to the temple quarter. And none of them is paid in gold. Or silver. Or anything we'd recognize as money. Because the Inca economy worked on a different logic, one that valued reciprocity over transaction. You didn't buy. You offered. You didn't sell. You contributed. This was called Ani, a principle of mutual exchange. If your neighbor helped you build your house, you helped them harvest. If the state needed a road, you gave time, labor, and skill. And in return, you got food from state storehouses, protection from enemies, clothes from state-run workshops. Gold. Gold was for the gods. Historians still argue whether the Inca system was truly moneyless or simply operated with a different kind of symbolic economy. But either way, gold never entered daily trade. You didn't tip your weaver in nuggets or carry gold flakes in your belt. If you had a piece of gold at home, it was likely ceremonial, or you were in trouble. You wander over to a line of farmers, each presenting woven sacks of quinoa to a royal steward. They aren't taxed in coins. They pay with produce, in time, in skill. The steward records nothing in ink. He uses quipus, long cords with colored knots, a sort of tactile accounting system, as complex as any spreadsheet. No golden ink. Just memory tied into string. And it worked. The state knew how much food was needed where. Who owed labor, and when. Who had already contributed, and who still needed to give. Not a coin in sight. You walk past a grain storehouse, its walls lined with thatched baskets full of maize, beans, dried fish. This isn't a private pantry. This is for everyone. The result of thousands of acts of communal offering, not payment. Not purchase. And yet, gold was everywhere. Just not used. You pass another shrine. A golden snake lies coiled around its base, crafted so finely you expect it to slither away. But no one guards it. No one reaches for it. It belongs here. Not to a person, but to the world. You turn a corner and find an elder teaching a child how to shape a golden corn husk. The child's hands are clumsy but eager. The elder chuckles softly. Not too sharp, she murmurs. This gold doesn't feed. It thanks. Because that's what it does. It thanks the gods for the harvest. It honors the sun for rising. It shows gratitude not just to power, but to life. You return to your bench, watching as the sky shifts to a deeper blue. The last light glints off a golden disk on a temple's peak. It doesn't dazzle. It glows. Not like wealth, but like a promise. So tonight, as you rest, imagine a world where gold has no price tag. Where value is in what you give, not what you own. Where shining things don't tempt, but teach. And if you dream of soft knots tied in colored cords, or a golden snake basking in the afternoon light, just smile. You're learning their language. The golden sun begins its slow descent behind the jagged peaks of the Andes, casting long shadows across the plaza as you follow the curve of a stone wall into a sacred courtyard. You pass under an arched gateway, and suddenly, there it is. A garden, glinting in the fading light. But not green. Not growing. Not quite real. At first, it looks like an ordinary field. Rows of maize stalks, tiny birds perched among the leaves, insects mid-flight. But a second glance tells you something's off. These aren't plants. They're gold. You've arrived at one of the Inca Empire's most famous wonders, the Golden Garden of Coricancha. A space of ritual and reverence where every leaf, kernel, and creature was crafted from precious metal. And none of it was meant to be harvested. You step carefully between the rows, half expecting the breeze to rustle the golden leaves. But they do not move. They glow. Life-sized ears of corn shimmer in the late sunlight. Hummingbirds, frozen mid-hover, glint like tiny sun gods. Butterflies with wings of hammered gold perch silently on golden sunflowers. You reach out, not to touch, but just to witness. Each piece is shockingly delicate. The corn has texture. The flower petals curl slightly at the edges. The birds are hollow, their feathers engraved with microscopic detail. Historians still debate whether this garden was the work of one generation or the product of centuries. But all agree, it wasn't decorative. It was offering. A sacred recreation of nature in metal, meant to reflect the bounty of the land back to the gods. A kind of spiritual mirror. You kneel beside a golden guinea pig, its little paws tucked under its belly, its ears alert. Even it, a humble creature of the Andes, has been honored in metal. Nothing is too small for reverence here. And that's what's most striking, this isn't ostentatious. It's intentional. The Incas didn't flaunt gold for ego. They built with it to express awe. To imitate the natural world, not because they wanted to replace it, but because they wanted the gods to know, we see what you've given us. You sit beside a statue of a golden llama. It stares out toward the mountains, where the real herds graze. It's not shiny like a trophy. It's soft. Quiet. Almost humble. And here's something stranger still, despite the obvious value of the materials, no guards stood watch. No walls were built to hide this field. It was open. Shared. The people walked through it during festivals. The priests led processions around it. The garden existed to be seen, by the sun above and the people below. You rise slowly and make your way toward a low altar at the far end. There, a set of golden chicha jugs gleams beside a row of maize bowls, also gold. None of them have ever held food. They're symbolic. Ritual containers, echoing the harvest and the community's eternal gratitude. You imagine the ceremonies that took place here, dancers circling the golden plants. Priests offering smoke and prayers. The emperor standing tall in his golden robes, speaking words only the wind remembers now. Fringe accounts from early Spanish chroniclers describe this garden in disbelief, as if it were legend. But they agree on one thing, the conquistadors were stunned silent when they saw it. That was before they melted it all down. You sit back on your heels. The light is nearly gone. The golden maize now glows with a deeper hue, like fire beneath the earth. You wonder how many people passed through this garden and felt that same pause. That same stillness. That same desire not to touch, but just to witness. Because here, gold doesn't scream. It whispers. So tonight, if your dreams take you through a garden that doesn't grow, but still lives, don't rush. The sun is watching. The golden garden fades behind you, leaving your thoughts full of metallic maize and motionless birds that somehow felt alive. But now you're ascending. Higher. Beyond the city. Past the terraces. Into the sky. Your sandals crunch against ancient stone as you climb the trail that winds ever upward, thinning the air and stretching the horizon. This isn't a casual walk. This is a pilgrimage, the kind the Incas took for rituals so sacred, they brought their most precious offerings. And not to temples. To the mountains. You reach a flat plateau carved into the side of a snow-capped peak. The view is endless. Clouds hover below like a sea of cotton. And there, nestled in a small hollow, is what you've come to see, a golden statue, resting beside a bundle wrapped in woven cloth. This is an offering site, one of many dotting the Andean spine. And this one holds more than objects. It holds stories, sealed in silence, preserved by cold. You kneel beside the bundle. It is the size of a child. And it is a child. Carefully positioned, arms crossed, face serene. A ceremonial sacrifice, part of a rite known as capicocha. The child would have been chosen for purity, honored by the community, treated not as a victim but a messenger. And with them came gifts, tiny golden llamas. Cups. Jewelry. All buried high in the mountains to carry messages to the gods. You lift one small object gently from the snow-packed soil, a golden figure with wide, solemn eyes. It's not polished like the temple gold. It's softer. Simpler. Handmade, maybe by a village smith. But it shines just the same. Historians still argue whether these mountaintop offerings were meant to prevent disaster, celebrate empire, or honor celestial events. But all agree, they were among the Incas' most sacred acts. The farther the journey, the higher the peak, the more precious the offering. And gold was the highest. You move slowly around the site. Other items lie half buried, silver pins, gold discs, small copper tools. One figurine is shaped like a warrior. Another like a woman carrying a basket. These weren't symbols of wealth. They were companions. The journey to the afterlife, after all, was long. You take in the stillness. Up here, gold doesn't glitter. It rests. Unmelted. Untouched. Still in the position it was placed centuries ago. The cold preserves everything, linen, hair, intention. The light catches the gold just enough to remind you, the sun still sees. You remember a fringed tale passed down in whispers, that the Incas believed the mountains were alive. That they could speak. And that sacrifices weren't just sent up, they were welcomed. You sit on a flat stone, heart beating softly in the thin air. You understand now, not all Inca gold was placed in palaces or temples. Some of the most precious objects were carried far away. To be given. Not for show. Not for gain. But because the gods lived where no one else could. And here's the strange beauty of it, these offerings weren't collected. They weren't looted. They remained untouched, hidden in snow and silence for centuries. Many were only discovered in modern times by climbers and archaeologists, and even then, only accidentally. You close your eyes, just for a moment. The wind hums through the stones. It's not cold. Not really. Just, ancient. You imagine the child, dressed in fine cloth, gold tucked into tiny hands. A last breath drawn in honor, not fear. You rise slowly, brushing frost from your robe, and look out over the valley. Somewhere down there is Cusco, its golden temples blinking in the light. But up here? Just sky, stone, and offerings that no one expected to be seen again. So tonight, if your dreams lead you to mountaintops above the clouds, don't be afraid. That's just where the gods keep their brightest things. The wind trails behind you as you descend the mountain, each step bringing thicker air and warmer ground. You return slowly to the lowlands, but your thoughts are still up there, in the clouds, beside a golden figurine nestled in eternal snow. Now, as you pass back through the terraced fields and quiet shrines near Cusco, something changes. The air feels heavier. The stone streets are louder. And then you hear it, laughter, distant clanging, and a peculiar tale being told with great drama. You pause at a gathering of locals, huddled in the corner of a courtyard, reenacting a strange story, Inca warriors marching to battle in gold-plated armor, so blindingly brilliant that the Spanish couldn't look directly at them. You smile, but also squint. Did they really? Or is this just legend? Because tonight, you're diving into one of the strangest intersections between myth and history, Inca gold and warfare, or, more precisely, what people thought it looked like. Here's what we know, the Incas were practical. They didn't melt gold into swords or helmets. It was too soft, too sacred. Their real armor? Cotton. That's right, thick, quilted cotton, layered and tied tight. It absorbed arrows, cushioned blows, and weighed far less than metal. You follow the path toward a military barracks, imagining warriors drilling in formation. They wear colorful tunics, not gold. Their weapons are slings, clubs, spears. Their shields are wood and hide. Their helmets, sometimes bronze or wood, rarely metal, and never gold. It would have dented too easily. And besides, gold belonged to the gods. So where did the stories come from? When the Spanish first arrived, they were dazzled, literally. Not by warriors in golden suits, but by the ceremonial attire of nobles. During festivals and rituals, high-ranking Incas would wear chest plates, masks, even headdresses adorned with thin sheets of gold. Under the sun, this display was magnificent, intimidating, even blinding. But it wasn't combat gear. Historians still argue whether early Spanish accounts confused festival displays with battle dress, or whether the tales were intentionally exaggerated to fuel the myth of a wealthy, divine empire ripe for conquest. You pass a statue of a warrior now, holding a staff tipped with a sunburst. He isn't dressed in gold, but in tightly woven cloth, sandals, and a sash tied at his waist. He looks focused. Ready. Real. And yet, the myths endure. Tales of golden shields flashing like fire. Of Inca generals so radiant, birds mistook them for dawn. Some say the Incas covered horses in gold to frighten enemies, though horses didn't arrive until the Spanish brought them. Others tell of war banners stitched with golden thread that fluttered like divine flames. Fringe versions even describe entire battalions draped in shimmering cloaks, as if they were extensions of Inti himself. You sit by a well, cool stone beneath you. A nearby elder chuckles as he recounts a battle where an Inca warrior allegedly blinded a Spanish horseman by reflecting the sun off a polished gold medallion strapped to his chest. Did it happen? Maybe. Did the horse faint dramatically and the soldier swear off conquest? Probably not. But the image lingers. And that's the thing about gold. Even when not used, its presence shapes perception. The Spanish expected gold. Wanted it. Dreamed of it. And so, even simple cotton armor, well dyed, well fitted, worn with confidence, may have shimmered with imagined wealth. You rise now, leaving the courtyard storytellers behind. The streets glow with evening light. No warriors pass. Just people. Traders, children, weavers. None wearing gold. All remembering it. So tonight, if your dreams include soldiers made of sunlight, with shields like mirrors and spears of fire, don't worry. You're not in battle. You're just standing in the middle of a legend. Night settles softly across Cusco. You walk slowly now, your sandals brushing along ancient stones smoothed by centuries of quiet footsteps. But tonight's path doesn't lead to a garden or a temple. It leads underneath. You pause at the edge of a stone plaza, where a narrow stairway descends into darkness. A guard nods, lifting a woven curtain. You step down, deeper, into what feels like another world, one not lit by the sun, but filled with rumors, secrets, and the metallic scent of legend. Because down here, beneath the heart of the city, are whispers of hidden caches and booby traps, tunnels said to house Inca gold that was never meant to be found. The stone corridor winds left, then right, then left again. Your fingers trace the walls. Smooth. Then rough. Then, hollow. You pause. Tap gently. Something beneath the stone rings different. But there's no handle. No hinge. Just stone. You've just walked into one of the most enduring Inca legends, that when the Spanish arrived, the Incas didn't hand over all their gold, they hid it. And not just in caves. In corridors like this. Behind false walls. Beneath sacred rooms. Sealed with spells, smoke, or stories too old to trace. Historians still argue whether these stories have real foundations or are built mostly from Spanish imagination, but evidence suggests some tunnels did exist. One old Spanish chronicler described entire rooms under Cusco lined with gold, protected by pressure stones. Step in the wrong spot, and the ceiling collapsed. Another tale tells of passageways between Coricancha and Sacsayhuaman, filled with golden effigies and dead ends designed to trap invaders. You reach a fork. One path leads forward, the other veers slightly down. You take the lower one. It's darker here. You use your fingers again, counting the grooves in the walls, 1, 2, 3, until you stop at a circular chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and there in the middle, nothing. At least, nothing now. But the shape is telling, a pit, once filled, now cleared. You sit at its edge, imagining what might have rested there, a golden sun disk. A cache of ceremonial vessels. Offerings meant for gods, not conquistadors. One fringe legend says that certain Inca priests memorized secret vaults and were forbidden to draw maps. Their memories were the locks. When they died, often executed or lost in uprisings, the locations died with them. You lean back against the wall, eyes closed. It's easy to imagine it, panicked officials moving treasure under cover of night. Slaves sealing the entrances behind them. False doors. Decoy passages. One story claims a priest gave the Spanish a map, but it was written in Quipu knots. They couldn't read it. The treasure stayed buried. Another tale, more fanciful, speaks of golden statues that cursed any who moved them. Traps that triggered floods. Llamas sculpted with open mouths, ready to pour molten metal at intruders. Probably fiction. But in this dark space, you're not so sure. You retrace your steps now, back toward the plaza, the tunnel narrowing slightly. The air feels heavier here. Your footsteps echo strangely, as if something's listening. But then, you're out. Back under the stars, with the moon casting silver across the rooftops. The corridor is sealed again. Hidden in plain sight. Because that's the truth of it, much of Inca gold may never be found. It wasn't stolen. It was protected. Stashed in places known only to those who understood what gold was really for, not wealth, not war, but reverence. So tonight, if your dreams take you underground, through narrow tunnels and whispering walls, don't be afraid. You're not trespassing. You're just following where the light was hidden. You leave the stone corridor behind, heart still echoing with the hush of buried treasure and breathless passageways. The stars above feel sharper now, clearer somehow, like they've been watching this story unfold for centuries. But now your path takes you to a very different kind of chamber. A square room. Thick walls. Smooth stone. And inside, almost unbelievably, is a mark on the wall, a line carved just above your head. It's faded now, but it once glowed. It once meant everything. You've entered the most infamous room in Inca history, Atahualpa's ransom room. Step closer. Run your hand along the wall. That faint groove. It's said to mark how high the Inca emperor promised to fill the room, with gold. Not coins. Not nuggets. But objects, statues, cups, plates, masks, jewelry. All to buy his freedom. Here's what happened. When the Spanish captured Atahualpa in 1532, they didn't understand the world they had stepped into. And he didn't understand theirs. He offered what he thought was obvious, a ransom. In Inca style. Not a bribe, not a payoff, an exchange. His freedom, in return for a room full of sacred gold. And he meant it literally. He promised to fill the room once with gold, and twice again with silver, up to that line on the wall. He sent messengers. From every corner of the empire, golden objects began to arrive, sacred vessels from temples, heirlooms from nobles, golden replicas of llamas and ears of corn. Some were hundreds of years old. Some were irreplaceable. You close your eyes and imagine it, the room gleaming, wall to wall, floor to ceiling. Not with treasure. With meaning. with items no one thought would ever be removed from their sacred places. Historians still argue over the exact value, but by some estimates, over 24 tons of precious metal were gathered. All of it destined to save one man. One emperor. One symbol of an empire. And the Spanish? They agreed. At least at first. But when the room was finally filled, when the gold shimmered and the silver gleamed, they changed their minds. Atahualpa was executed anyway. You sit quietly on the floor now, the stone cool beneath you. The groove on the wall is just a line. But the weight it carries is unbearable. Because the ransom wasn't just a negotiation, it was a surrender of the divine. The Inca gave up gold that connected them to gods. Objects never meant to leave their temples were carted off to be melted. That's the heartbreak. The gold didn't go to museums. It didn't become heirlooms in Europe. Most of it was turned into bars. Identical, lifeless bars. Everything that made those objects sacred, their shape, their story, their spirit, was lost. You trace the groove again, fingertips following the shadow of what once shimmered. The room is empty now, but if you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the quiet clink of a golden mask being set down. The soft rustle of a priest weeping behind a curtain. The fringe stories say some couriers refused to give up their loads. That they took detours. Hid pieces. Threw golden figurines into ravines or lakes rather than see them melted. Some even say a portion of the ransom never arrived, diverted into secret hiding places now long forgotten. You stand slowly, the silence wrapping around you like a woven shawl. Outside, the city carries on. But this room, this quiet box of stone, is still asking questions. What is gold, really? A weight? A prize? Or a promise? So tonight, if your dreams place you in a room filling slowly with gold, each piece handed over with hope, with sorrow, with trembling fingers, stay a while. You're not in a prison. You're in a memory. You step out of the ransom room into the dusky evening light, but something inside you doesn't leave. That hollow chamber stays with you, its empty echo louder than any drumbeat. You keep walking, but your feet feel heavier now, as if you're retracing the paths of what was taken, step by golden step. Because once the ransom was collected, once Atahualpa was gone, the floodgates opened. And what followed was not barter. Not diplomacy. It was systematic looting. The Spanish, their eyes now wide with possibility, and greed, no longer waited for offers. They took temples, tombs, royal storehouses. What once glimmered for the gods now vanished into fire. You stop outside what was once a temple courtyard. The stone walls are still here. But the gold? Gone. Stripped. Torn down. Melted. Not piece by piece. By weight. Not into shapes. Into bricks. You kneel at a corner where sun used to reflect off golden sheets. Now the stone shows faint scars, as if still mourning its lost skin. A priest once stood here, offering light to the gods. Now it offers nothing but shadow. You make your way through the city, following what might once have been a royal procession route. But instead of drums and dancers, now there are carts, wooden, heavy, pulled by animals not from this continent. Spanish soldiers walk beside them, their armor dull, their faces hard. They're not collecting offerings. They're gathering loot. Historians estimate that over 90% of all Inca gold was melted down and shipped to Europe within a few short years of conquest. Entire temples emptied. Mummies stripped of ornaments. Sacred objects tossed into smelting pots without a second thought. You pass a smelting station now, recreated near the edge of the city. It's rudimentary, just a pit, a stone platform, bellows. But the fire? The fire was efficient. Gold didn't stand a chance. One fringe account describes priests weeping as golden figurines screamed in the flames. Not from noise, but from memory. From the sudden loss of all meaning. That cup was never meant to be drunk from. That mask was never meant to be worn. They were transformed not just physically, but spiritually, erased. You stop in a storage hall that once held ceremonial vessels. You picture it full, rows of glinting gold, each one shaped with care, polished with smoke and cloth. And then you imagine it emptied. The hollowness. The silence. The prayers stopped mid-sentence. The Spanish called it treasure. They made lists. Weighed it. Numbered it. Packed it into crates and loaded it onto ships. Some sank, taking entire fortunes to the bottom of the ocean. Some reached Europe, funding palaces, wars, and reputations. But the Incas? They didn't see gold disappearing. They saw language vanishing. Every melted piece was a sentence lost, a name forgotten, a god turned silent. You sit now on a temple step, the stone warm beneath you. Children play nearby, laughing in Quechua, their feet bare, their faces bright. Gold isn't visible here anymore. But its absence is loud. And still, the memory remains. Fringe legends tell of porters who slipped away with golden pieces and buried them in high caves, in secret valleys, beneath sacred lakes. Not to hoard, but to protect. To wait. You lean your head back, eyes on the stars peeking out overhead. The sky looks the same now as it did then. Still wide. Still listening. So tonight, if your dreams carry you through empty plazas and hollow temples, let the silence speak. Let the echoes remind you. What was taken still matters. And what was sacred, still is. You rise slowly from the temple step, the last laughter of children fading behind you, replaced by the hush of twilight. The streets grow quieter now. The fires dim. And your steps turn away from Cusco's center, away from the known, the charted, the emptied halls. Because even as gold vanished from plain sight, stories began to bloom. Tales of what wasn't taken. What was missed. You're walking now into the mist, toward the lost. Toward El Dorado. Toward Lake Titicaca's sun disk. Toward the Inca gold that slipped away. It starts with a whisper. A porter who vanished into the jungle. A priest who disappeared with a bundle of golden discs. A hidden chamber sealed before the Spanish arrived, marked by nothing but a carved stone that no one could decipher. One of the most enduring legends tells of a golden sun disk, once mounted in Coricancha's highest shrine, round, radiant, polished to perfection. When the Spanish stormed the temple, the disk was gone. Never found. Never seen again. Some say it was dropped into Lake Titicaca, the sacred inland sea at the roof of the world. A place where the gods first walked. You follow the story down a narrow path, hearing the lake's soft murmur in the distance. And then, there it is, moonlight shimmering on dark water. The surface calm, but beneath it? Who knows? Divers have searched. Scholars have mapped. But nothing definitive has ever been found. Just glimmers. A few small items. And stories. Always stories. You sit on a rock near the edge, letting your fingers trail the water. If the sun disk was truly hidden here, it wasn't done out of panic. It was done out of faith. Faith that what was sacred shouldn't be surrendered. Then there's the tale of Paititi, the city of gold. Said to lie deep in the Amazon, guarded by spirits, visible only to the worthy. A city untouched, where Inca priests fled with their knowledge, their rituals, and their treasures. Search parties vanished. Maps surfaced and then disappeared. Even modern explorers have returned empty-handed, but with wild eyes. Historians still argue whether Paititi ever existed, or if it's just a mirage born of grief. But the trail remains. A stone here. A carving there. And always, the sense that something is just out of reach. You leave the lakeside now and follow a narrow ridge road, where tales shift into even stranger territory. A caravan of priests, they say, once carried golden effigies into a cave that sealed itself when the last man stepped out. Others believe treasure was hidden in false graves, tombs filled with clay decoys, while the real objects were buried high in the cliffs or low in riverbeds. You find yourself in a ravine, the walls covered in moss, the stones worn smooth. No signs. No symbols. But something about it feels heavy. Not with weight. With intention. One fringe story tells of an Inca woman who swallowed a golden earring before being captured. Not out of fear, but defiance. "You cannot have what I carry," she reportedly said, "unless you take my soul." And so, the Incas did what they always did, they gave gold not to the conqueror, but to the earth. To the lake. To the sky. To caves that collapse behind you. To legends that blur into mist. You look up at the stars. They're still watching. Somewhere, perhaps, beneath your feet or across that next peak, a golden puma rests. A sun disk waits. Not forgotten, just out of reach. So tonight, if your dreams take you into forests that never end, or show you glimmers in water too deep to see the bottom, don't chase too hard. Some treasure is meant to hide. Some stories are their own gold. The sky is dark now, and the stars settle in like quiet guardians above the ridges and rivers. But your walk isn't over, not yet. There's one more trail to follow, one more truth to touch before the dreaming begins. Because all that gold, all that shimmer, it changed the world. Not just for the Inca. Not just for the Spanish. But for everyone who came after. You find yourself in a quiet village at the empire's edge. Not Cusco, not a royal capital. Just a place where people gather, where stories are passed down with chicha and laughter, where elders sit outside and carve little suns into soft wood, their fingers working without hurry. A woman calls you over. She shows you a small bundle. Not gold. Cloth. Woven tight, patterned with the same stepped shapes you saw in the temples. She opens it and shows you what's inside, a small disc, bronze-colored now, but with just enough shine to suggest a past life. She doesn't call it treasure. She calls it memory. Because even after the gold was melted, even after the gods were renamed, even after the temples were broken into chapels, the memory remained. In modern Peru and Bolivia, gold is still mined. Still polished. Still sold. But in these high valleys, in these ancient paths, it's remembered as something different. Not just wealth. Not power. But connection. You walk past a school wall painted with Inca motifs, sun rays, golden masks, maize fields. Children run by, their uniforms dusty, their Quechua laughter bright. They don't need the original sun disk. They are the continuation of that light. Historians still argue whether the Incas' real legacy is their architecture, their engineering, or their statecraft. But speak to the people here, and they'll tell you, it's memory. And memory is gold. You enter a small chapel next, built atop the remains of a sacred temple. The altar is Christian now. But behind it, set into the back wall, is a small niche where a faint golden shape once hung. You run your fingers along the empty frame. It's smooth from centuries of touch. People still reach for it. Not because they expect the gold to return, but because they still remember what it meant. A guide walks with you now, her shawl wrapped tightly against the wind. She gestures to the land. Gold was never the wealth, she says quietly. The mountain was the wealth. The people were the wealth. Gold just helped us speak to the gods. You nod, eyes tracing the horizon where the last of the dusk gives way to night. The empire is gone. The temples are ruins. But the stories are not lost. They shimmer in silence. Even in music. You pass a group of musicians tuning charangos, small guitars with backs once made from armadillo shells. One plucks a melody that sounds almost like sunlight. The lyrics, half Spanish, half Quechua, tell of rivers with golden fish and caves that sing when the moon is full. It's not nostalgia. It's resilience. A quiet reclaiming of something that was never truly taken. You return to your room in a village house. The roof is thatched, the air cool. You lay on a woven mat, and above your bed hangs a small golden replica of Inti's face. Not ancient. Handmade. Local. Honest. You reach up and let your fingers rest against it. It's cold. Then warm. Then something in between. So tonight, as your breath slows and your thoughts loosen, remember this: gold isn't always found in vaults. Or in maps. Or at the bottom of lakes. Sometimes, it glows in memory. In language. In the quiet smile of someone who still knows why the sun matters. And if you dream tonight of light that lingers, not because it dazzles, but because it means something, just follow it. You're almost there. The village is silent now. A single dog barks once, then settles. Somewhere beyond the hill, a flute plays, slow, hesitant, as if the wind itself is remembering something. You lie still beneath your blanket, and the golden disk above your bed seems to pulse gently in the dark. And so we come to the final shimmer in this story. Not the metal. Not the myth. The legacy. Because the Incas are gone, or so they say. The empire fell. The temples were broken. The gold was melted. But listen closely, and you'll hear it: the Inca world never really left. It's still here. Still glimmering in places no sword can touch. You walk now through a small museum tucked inside a former colonial house. The walls are whitewashed. The floor creaks softly under your steps. And in the center of the room, a single golden object. Small. Simple. A maize stalk. Not life-sized. Not elaborate. Just, precise. Whole. You stand before it and wonder, how did this survive? Out of all that was taken, burned, lost, how did this one piece remain? The answer is, it didn't survive by accident. It survived because someone protected it. Wrapped it. Hid it. Buried it. Carried it under a cloak. Whispered its meaning into the ear of a child who remembered. Historians still debate how much Inca gold was truly lost forever, how much was smelted, and how much might still be out there. But maybe that's the wrong question. Because gold, to the Incas, was never just physical. It was relational. Ceremonial. Spiritual. You sit on a bench beside the display. A guide walks by and says quietly, "This is not the original. But it is made in the same way. By the same people." And that's when it hits you: the legacy isn't in what was preserved. It's in what was remembered. In the techniques still taught. In the reverence still felt. In the festivals where sun-shaped medallions are carried through crowds. In every Quechua word still spoken beneath snow-capped peaks. You leave the museum and walk slowly down the street. A child skips ahead of you, wearing a woven sash with golden thread glinting in the moonlight. A woman sweeps her doorway with a broom trimmed in bronze beads. A shopkeeper places a handmade replica of Inti in the window, not to sell, but to greet the sunrise. These aren't recreations. They are continuations. Gold, as the Incas knew, can't last forever. But the meanings behind it can. You pause at the edge of the plaza, watching as lanterns flicker in windows. Somewhere, an old man tells a story that starts, "When the sun god cried, he left us gold to carry his tears." You smile. You believe him. So tonight, as your eyes begin to close, let the golden trails of memory swirl gently behind your lids. Not in piles. Not in rooms filled to the ceiling. But in cornfields. In mountaintops. In hearts that still listen when the wind carries songs from long ago. Because the Incas are not gone. They're just quieter now. And their gold? Still glowing, right where they left it. Now let your breath slow. Let the stars settle. Let the hills quiet. You're far from the cities now. Far from the temples, the tunnels, the treasure rooms and mountain paths. You lie still beneath woven blankets, your head cradled by the hush of highland wind. Let the light of the past drift over you like a soft blanket of gold, nothing heavy, nothing sharp. Just warmth. Just memory. Feel the stories settle in your chest. Not loud. Just present. You don't need to find the gold. You don't need to hold it. You've already walked with it. In hands that shaped it. In songs that praised it. In a world where it meant more than money. Where it linked sky to soil. Sun to soul. Life to legacy. Let it glow now, in your breath. Let it rest, in your thoughts. The path is quiet. The footsteps are gone. But the shimmer lingers. Sleep now, softly. The sun will rise again soon. And with it, the gold.